Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Ever wonder how to creatively bridge art and agriculture together? Donna Neuwirth and Jay Salinas have mastered this creative bridge. And they not only have mastered integrating art and agriculture, they have also set the stage for lifelong connections to form, way beyond their company's many inspiring projects. After many years working in art and theater in Chicago, Donna Neuwirth and Jay Salinas moved to a farm in the Driftless Region of southwest Wisconsin and learned to grow vegetables. Don't worry, I asked about what the Driftless Region is, and Jay did a great job of describing it to me. Stay tuned for that. Seduced by life in the soil, I love this phrase written by Donna and Jay and couldn't wait to repeat it, and struck by parallels between farming and art making, Jay and Donna formed Wormfarm Institute and created an Artist Residency Program in the year 2000. They slowly transformed a dairy barn into a studio space and initiated a CSA farm share program. Each year, resident artists of all disciplines are carefully selected to come to the farm from across the country to grow food, eat well, and make art. Out of these seasonal infusions of creative energy, grounded in the most fundamental activity, farming, Wormfarm's public-facing programs such as the biennial Art Detour emerged. Detour is spelled D-T-O-U-R. It started out as a real detour from another art tour, a little story that Jay explains in our interview. This farm art detour is probably not what you are thinking it is. It is an actual art, pretty big art, built onto farmland that can be viewed via a vehicle tour. I interviewed Jay while he and Donna were on hiatus from the Wisconsin farm, spending time in their second home, Mexico City. Jay describes the energy he feels at the Wisconsin farm and the energy he derives from being in Mexico City. He hopes to create more connections from his Wisconsin home to his home away from home in Mexico City. This is your Agritourist podcast host, Jen Ross. Enjoy my conversation with Jay Salinas from Wormfarm Institute. Hey, Jay. How are you?
Jen. Good.
And it looks like it's sunny there.
Every single day.
So you're in Mexico City?
Yes, yeah.
Nice. And do you have a place down there or what?
No, I mean, we've been coming here for about almost 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
And just, fell in love. We've been checking out parts of the country, but have fallen in love mostly with Mexico City and spend most of our time here. We live on a farm in rural Wisconsin. So this is sort of the antidote to that. I mean, we love our life in rural isolation, but it's also a great reset to come here. And I tell a story about we've heard of forest bathing, right?
Yep.
Going into the woods, and here we're sort of human bathing. We're immersing ourselves in 22 million people who are living fascinating, fabulous lives in a beautiful city that's of course, has tons of challenges and poverty and corruption and violence, but is so vibrant and lively and inspirational. I mean, that's a big part of it. It turns out that we have found inspiration for our work here, and even been successful at building bridges between countries and bringing Mexican farmers and chefs and artists to Estados Unidos and having them be part of our thing. So, yeah,
That's great.
Yeah. So
and it's
anyway,
not only great, it's so needed in today's world. Like that feeling and that, just wanting to have that connection is something that just, it feels good to hear that. So
let's build bridges initiative, and we trying to find many ways to manifest that. We're becoming more and more involved with the immigrant issues in our community too. So yeah, I try and keep current events out of this. But
no, trust me, I know I'm in agreement, but at the same time, I think it's, I think what you just said is really important. So, and if more people felt that way, and if we can spread that feeling, that I think it'll be very helpful in the coming years. Okay, so I don't know where to start here. There's so many. Let me start with you. Okay, let's start with who you are, your background. And I don't know if Donna wants to chime in about herself, or if you want to tell me about her background. I've obviously read your bios, but I'd like you to tell your story a little bit.
Sure,
and let's lead up to what you're, how you connected and what you're, what this is all about, because I think what you're doing is very unique and very needed. So please tell me who you are.
Okay, all right. Jay Salinas. I describe myself as an artist and farmer. I'm trained as a sculptor, have a master's degree and all that stuff. But for the last 30 plus years, a big part of my life has been raising vegetables and cattle and different livestock in a small farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin, which is about 4 hours from Chicago, where we're from. And
the thing said the Driftless Region of Southwest Wisconsin.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I've never heard that term.
Okay.
I'm
Southwest
from New York,
Wisconsin. So. Yeah. Well, there's a connection. So Southwest Wisconsin, a little bit of Illinois and Iowa were missed by the glacial ice sheets.
Okay.
And so the landscape is very, surrounding us. Like Illinois and even parts of eastern and northern central Wisconsin are pretty flat. We're very hilly, with lots of hills and valleys. It's a landscape defined by erosion. There are no natural lakes in the Driftless region, but there's lots of streams and creeks and that run into the Wisconsin River. And we kind of stumbled on this. It's a place of really significant beauty and a really unique human and natural history that is probably in no small part tied to the landforms. So our farm, I'm going to say this because I'm pretty sure it's true from the research I've done. So there were actually 3 ice sheets that came across North America beginning 40,000 years ago, and all 3 of them missed the Driftless region.
Okay.
We have a ridge on our farm that is probably the first ridge of the Driftless. 40,000 years ago, that first glacier would have would have seen it from the hill on our farm, and so we are just the other side of the hill. We were kind of this part of something called Glacial Lake, Wisconsin. Anyway, I can nerd out on this for hours.
No, it's interesting though. I was just curious because I'm not as familiar with the geography in that area.
It's the homeland of the Ho-Chunk peoples. They're the native tribe that has been here since time immemorial. It's also a place where Frank Lloyd Wright was born and established his home and studio. Taliesin is down the road from our farm.
Wow.
Aldo Leopold, Sand County Almanac, St. Aldo as he's called, wrote most of his book based on experience on a cabin chicken coop. He and his family spend weekends and weeks at. He was a professor at UW in Madison, and that the shack is like a pilgrimage site, and the foundation devoted to sharing his philosophy of the land ethic is nearby. And I mean, the Black Hawk War, which was probably the most significant human event in the upper Midwest when an ethnic cleansing took place in the 1830s. So all this stuff this is the land on which we live and work, and just kind of,
Wow, a lot of significance.
Yeah.
So why farming? I mean, it's not, not everyone everyone gets into farming. Like for you, why farming? What attracted you? What was your first interaction with farming? What was your connection that pulled you in?
Well, as an adult, I mean, as a little kid, I helped bale hay and walk the beans, hoed beans back in the day, but that doesn't really count. But I think
well, it does. I think it does
a little bit. Yeah. So I was born in Chicago, and my family moved out to a town called Aurora. My father was an air traffic controller, and we lived on the edge of cornfield, which is now Home Depots and Anyway, so I had a little bit of that experience in my background, but I'm a city boy. Didn't really know anything about farming. Don and I were living together in Wisconsin. I mean, in Illinois, in Chicago, in Pilsen. We lived a Mexican neighborhood, high density, very lively. A little bit like what's happening right outside my street, outside the window here. And we lived in a ballroom, a 6,000 square foot ballroom that we had converted to our use. I was making artwork, and Donna had a business creating props and sceneries for parties and special events. So anyway, we lived there for a couple of years, and the landlady really liked our space and decided she wasn't going to renew our lease. And so we had to find something else. And the idea of moving back into a 2-bedroom apartment at that point didn't seem very plausible. So we took a drive in the country. We had an ad in the classifieds back when something like that happened. There was an ad for a farm in this place called Waniwak, Wisconsin, and we drove out. Took our dog. We had acquired a dog by that time whose entire life was walking on cracked sidewalks over broken glass and gangbangers and barat shows, sleeping on the sidewalk, and we looked at this farm, and it was, pretty expensive and really nice. And it's, well, it's not really us, but you know what? It's not that much money compared to what things cost in Chicago. So we stopped in a realtor's office and got a listing and saw, went and looked at another farm that was very reasonable. And I said, well, hold on a second. We don't, this is the first one we looked at. You're not going to buy that. So we looked around at a few other places and said, no, you know what? That first one was it. And so we went to put an offer on that, and it had already sold. So now we wanted something. It was taken away from us, and the hunt was on. And so over the next year, we walked probably 50 farms. Like every weekend, we would go from Chicago to, it's about a 4-hour drive to there, and drive the beautiful back roads. And our dog was just beside herself with the space and seeing horses and cows and things. And then we ended up buying a 40-acre piece of a larger farm. We bought 40 acres. This hillside that I mentioned, when we bought that, the neighbors were just beside themselves because they passed on the croplands and bought the Himalayas. Can you believe that? But we're flatlanders, so owning a hill seemed like a really cool thing. So anyway, it was a falling down dairy farm. The folks who lived there, it had been in her family since the land was platted. So they didn't really understand what it meant to sell a house and move out. And there's all sorts of hilarious anecdotes about how that went down. But we bought a farm, and it's like, okay, now what do? I guess you grow things. And so the very, very first summer, Donna got a job off site, and it was up to me to put in our first kitchen garden, which I hadn't really done anything like that. And there's no garden anywhere on the property before. So I had my little gooseneck hoe and I'm hacking away at the sod and finally planted a couple seeds. Oh, this is stupid. This is never going to work. And then all of a sudden things grew. And then they grew and they produced fruits. And then it turned out fruits. I like that stuff. And so, and then we had we had lots of friends from the city who were telling us what we should do. You ought to have a B&B. Oh, you ought to have a brewery. Oh, you ought to raise fish or something like that. And then a friend sent us an article about this farming thing called community supported agriculture. And we go, okay, well, people pay you in advance to do that? Well, heck yes, let's sign up for that. And so we made up a brochure, or we came up with a name. So the name of the farm was the Neuwirth Wormfarm. And this is a partial play on Donna's name, last name Neuwirth. Worms, in our education about farming, we learned that worms were the indicators as well as creators of healthy soil. And we were never going to be the Whispering Pines or the Twin Oaks kind of people. And so we chose the silliest name possible and called it the Neuwirth Wormfarm. So we then began recruiting. So we began recruiting shareholders from Chicago, where he came from, friends and family, and we made a really cute brochure. And we did a version of the American Gothic where Donna had the pitchfork and I was wearing the apron, and
I love that.
Sent it out to all of our friends, and no one responded. And so we said, "Well, what's up?" And they told us, and so we wrote like a multiple page response and sent it out again, and got maybe 10 or 12 families to sign up. So here's the key: is we are 200 miles away from Chicago, and so the only economical way we could see to get the vegetables was if the families themselves came up and got it. So when we bought the farm, it was a giant farmhouse, and the whole second floor had been duplex. There was a separate kitchen, bath, living room upstairs, 3 bedrooms, and so each weekend during the season, 1 or 2 families. So at the beginning, it was 1, and then eventually 2 families would come up. They would get their farm experience, and on Sunday, we would load up their cars with the vegetables, and they would take it back to the city.
Wow.
And yeah. So
that's an interesting commitment.
It was the only way we could figure out how to make this work, and we didn't think we were people who would be in the hospitality business. We didn't move up to Wisconsin to make a bunch of new friends.
Right.
But we found out how powerful it was for people to have this experience. In fact, so much so that the people indicated that their favorite thing about the farm was not the vegetables; it was coming up to the farm. And we had lots of families with young children, and minivans were our friend then, and it worked out really. When we started having festivals and shared meals, so every week when they came, people would bring us things like a New York Times or some bagels or something that we couldn't get out there, and we would share a meal every Saturday night. We would have a potluck. They would make food upstairs, and we would make food downstairs. We'd sit out at the picnic table and sit, and just meet and have fun and enjoy one another. And a lot of them were strangers when they first arrived,
Right.
but some of them remain good friends to this day. We kept waiting for the jerks to arrive because, we've lived in the city long enough to know that, if you have 10 people, at least 3 of them are probably not jerks or are going to be jerks. But anyway, and that never happened. And so we weren't sure whether it was people around their best behavior or just people who attracted to this marketing thing would be better people. So anyway, so that worked out really, really, really well. And it never made a ton of money, but it was always being at the center of a community. It was, again, nothing we ever anticipated for ourselves, but, folks would, call us up or send us emails. Back when sending an email was a big thing. Oh, we had a big rain up down here in Chicago. I wonder if you guys got into that. I hope things are going well. And if they got the cauliflower that wasn't quite as, tight and white as the ones you get. Oh, I didn't like it at first, but it really tastes better. So all those things that both of us, the shareholders and we as farmers learned were really important.
Let me ask you a question about the CSA
Of course.
itself. How did you find doing actually as a farmer doing a CSA? What was your experience with that? I've had a CSA before, so I know some of the challenges, but I'm just curious, your first impression of it and the process. What was that like?
Well, both of us were working on it, and we each sort of had our realms within there. And Donna did most of the administrative work and wrote a newsletter every week, and I did most of the garden stuff. And it was complex and a lot of management and requiring a lot of adaptation, figuring things out on the fly and, making excuses why that spinach didn't show up. And, and it's sort of, it was an immersive lifestyle and one that continues to this day. We're still doing it. I mean, we're still doing a CSA. Donna is completely out. It's become a much, let's see, it's not as prominent in like the income, but it's a really significant part of what we do, that growing food for people, for a defined community. The really cool part about it now is that my shareholder base is not like Chicago. There a time came when that was no longer viable. We started recruiting locally. And now my shares go almost exclusively to the Ho-Chunk Nation, where they have a healthy eating program within the nation. So anyone who wants can get a subsidized share. The nation picks up most of the cost. And that's the thing that's probably kept the CSA alive for the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, it's not really a moneymaker. It provides some income, covers its, material costs, but no farmers make a decent hourly wage. So I mean that way it's been an eye opener. But now I'm like hooked. I mean, I can't. We've been trying to get out of it for years, but I can't stop. As soon as the ground thaws, I'm going to get out there and poke the ground with a stick. I mean, I kind of need it now for my mental health too, as I will get in further to the evolution of Wormfarm Institute. But I've found that it's really important. Like the more I have to deal with people, the more I want to go and pick beans or something like that, right? So I can grit my teeth and get through those long meetings and going, ooh, and people, you need some help today, Jay? Nope, I got it. So Don just reminded me a really important part of the CSA and the garden is, and the way it ties into the Institute was we'd been, after just a couple of years after we'd started, I was actually teaching sculpture part-time at a campus, UW campus in a town called Stevens Point. And this farming was new to me. And so I probably talked about it a lot. And then one of the students who's graduating with a BFA realized that there was really nothing waiting for them out there. Is, well, you keep talking about this farm. What if we came out there? What if I came out there and helped you guys? And it's like, that's sort of exactly what we were hoping would happen, And so Sonia Ellistat came out there in 1997 and stayed like 5 months. We finally had to throw her out because she would have never left. But she was also really critical to sort of setting this stage and seeing how this thing worked.
Right.
And so that evolved over a couple of years into what is now a residency program that's 25 years running continuously.
Yeah, I read about that. That sounds really intriguing.
It was the foundational program for the nonprofit, which was founded in 2000. And during the back and forth with the IRS seeking our status, I say that it helped us define the missions and goals of the project. They don't give it to you on the first time. You kind of have to explain yourself. And so now the residency is an annual thing. Usually we would be accepting applications now, reviewing them. We host 3 artists at a time, and usually hire a residency manager The facility is very rustic, and there's work exchange where the artists work 15 hours a week in the garden in exchange for the time and space and the food, room and board to make their own art. And and it's been a win-win situation. I mean, it's been probably the key to almost everything else that we've done on all sorts of levels. But having those fresh eyes come to your place where you see nothing but toil and falling down buildings and they're overgrown, they're like, oh, this place is so beautiful. And so, well, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. And then just watching these temporary creative communities sometimes form lifelong relationships and collaborations. And
Jay, do you get a lot of applicants for the program?
We in a good year we might get about 60 or 70 applicants. Wow. And the term of a residency can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 5 months, and we let them choose, and it's up to us to figure it out. So we host about 7 or 8 artists per year, so like 1 in 10. So I mean, I feel guilty. You know, I'm the primary reviewer, and I mean, I get to pick who we want here. You know, but in the meantime, I'm a dream crusher. I mean, these people, you know, they've got things. Oh, sorry, not this year. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, and 97% of the time it works out great. I mean, the people are just. Well, so when we select who we think the best candidate is, there's also this very important process where I try to talk them out of it. And if I tell them what an ordeal it's going to be, it's managing expectations. And this goes back to an early residency where when one that didn't go well, and on their way out the door, the artist said, this is not like any artist retreat I've ever been on before. And we thought, oh, because it's not an artist retreat. This is an engagement with the life of a working farm. And so that was really important for us. Even that kind of unpleasant experience helped us get better because now
definitely.
Yeah. So I, in an interview with a potential resident, I got about a 15-minute spiel where I described the ordeal they're getting into, and everything from cows and poop to coyotes and raccoons and the weather and cats who are going to leave dead mice outside your door and almost always, as I'm telling people, they're trying to talk them out, they go, yeah, really? And so I don't know that I've ever successfully talked anyone out of it. And I shade my description a little bit more toward the ordeal end of the spectrum. So when they arrive and find out they don't have to fight raccoons for their bed space, they're pleasantly surprised. So
we used to have a college internship program at our farm, and I do the same thing because there was this, like, I don't know, this woo-woo farm thing. And I would try to get them down to reality that you're going to be in the hot sun, you're going to be sweating, you're not going to want to do it someday. Like, and again, people were looking for that experience. So, but I always would do the same thing. I would create this really tough experience, and they
describe this bleak and
thing. You were trying to really get to the grit of the reality of it on those really bad days where it was, but that's what they were yearning for, and for the most part it turned out really well. So I get that. I totally get that.
So I mean, people come, we ask them what they're going to do, what they propose to do, and that almost never happens because they get here and they're there and their minds are blown and they meet these people and the thing they proposed goes out the window and they end up doing something completely different, which is completely cool. Yes, that's so cool. Yes. So, but they also spend a lot of time cooking and sharing food together. I mean, it's almost become a primary. So the tagline for the residency is get dirty, eat well, make art. And that eat well thing, I mean, people come, we don't get many of the hot pocket or TV dinner guys anymore. But people come with moderate kitchen skills, and they leave experienced bakers and fermenters and named sourdough starters. Oh, this is kefir. This kefir supplement. Yeah.
I
So
love it.
yeah. But they also make some really compelling art, and some of them they leave and we never see them again. But others come back, and we have now we have we've probably dealt with over 200 artists over the years, hosted over 200 artists, and from that, I mean, there's enough of them that have stayed in orbit that we. One of them now is our director of programs, a possible successor to us, who he
Wow.
had a solid adult job working at a foundation in St. Louis, an art foundation, and he came up for a 6-week residency, and then quit his job, and became a poet and a witch and a tarot reader, and now he moved to Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and made it at the beginning of the pandemic, and has been here ever since. And now he's got a partner, and they share children, and it's, oh my God, it's really wonderful to see. And so some of them do that, and some of them just pop in. There's another longtime collaborator who's now in Berlin. She came here first during the pandemic and has probably been back every year since then, and getting more involved in the community. And this is really important stuff too. So, yeah.
How does that make you feel when you know you've impacted over 200 artists?
Yeah. It's compared to what? I mean, it's the only thing we've ever done. So, and so we were able to keep the residency going during the pandemic.
That's great.
We got in our bubbles. Everyone stayed the distance. After 2 weeks, okay, now we all have to stay here for the summer. And we did that for a couple of years, and then shifted up the program a little bit. And so anyway, we've gone back and forth, and it feels really good to have been that part of someone's life, even if they didn't have a great experience. But they learned a lot about themselves, and they made connections that may or may not, but people who saw things differently than they did. So it's a really great experience. It's usually younger emerging artists. We don't no one right out of school. People coming right out of graduate school are not ideal candidates. We kind of have a sweet spot of people who got stuck in a job for years, and they've been working on this thing on the side. Oh, I just need a couple of weeks, and they come in. We just had one last year, a guy and the same thing. He came. He could only afford a short residency. He was only here for a couple of weeks. Just heard from him 2 weeks ago. He said, yeah, I'm quitting my job and going back to graduate school. And one part of us says, yes, way to go. Another part of us says, oh my God, what have we done? Yeah, we love it. We keep it going despite, we're old and getting cranky, and, as lovely as these people are, and as, we set it up so we can be mostly live separately from one another. We always share meals, though, like once a week we share a meal, have a potluck. That gets very competitive. But still, having, we're the type of people like, you're so young and full of energy. Wait till you get old and kick around a little bit. So, I mean, we never say that out loud, but that's, we feel that way when they're all, excited about everything in the world. You pups. Yeah. So anyway, that's the worst thing about it is just that our tolerance for, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, full of potential youngsters, is waning, perhaps. Yeah.
Age, huh? It does wonders for us. So, okay, so we have that program. Tell me,
Yeah.
then how did the Institute evolve? And all
Yeah.
the tour, I just am really interested in how all this kind of evolved and fits in.
Okay. So he said in 2000, we established ourselves as a nonprofit and with the residency as a program, but then started, it was also the time when we bought a building in downtown Reedsburg, bought and restored
Okay.
an 1890s storefront.
Wow.
And so everything we did before that, for 7 years had been on the farm, and people sort of heard about those hippie devil worshippers out there doing crazy stuff. But now we owned a building on Main Street, and we were literally invested in our downtown. So we did this beautiful restoration. We got awards for it.
Wow.
And then tried to turn the storefront into a gallery. And we did some shows, and they were nice, but no one really cared that much. Every time we did a show, we'd pick up one or two more fans and people. Oh, this is so great that this stuff is happening here. But then we did a mural. Our county established a small arts and grants program. The only county in Wisconsin only rural county in Wisconsin that does so. And so we did a series of history murals in and around town, first on the building that we owned, and then on a couple other buildings. And okay, this is nice. And then we did a puppet fest for several years. And then we started getting, about that time, people started noticing what we were doing on more public things. And through a series of projects, we were able to come up with, so here it is. So there's an annual event in Sauk County called the Driftless, called the Fall Art Tour. And, artists who live back, a lot of artists living in the Driftless and inviting people into the studios and get the tour, and you go from place to place and you buy some fabulous, ceramics and
like a self-guided or
yeah, you get a map and there's like
okay.
50 stops, and it's highly curated, and they're for profit, and they didn't come to Reedsburg. They stopped just short, and so we couldn't be part of it. And so in 2007 or 8, we did a fall art detour, being kind of little snot-nosed brats ourselves, and we set up our handmade signs. They had their signs saying, art tour this way, and we put our little handmade sign saying detour this way.
I love that.
And so we got a response. They weren't happy, but it was also small. And then in 2011, we were successful in luring a Smithsonian exhibit. There's a program they have called Museums on Main Street, where they have like a pre-made exhibit that travels the country, stopping in 4 places each state in towns of 10,000 or fewer. And at the time,
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you apply and you're selected based on the strength of your supporting programming. So the one that we were vying for was called Key Ingredients: America by Food. And so there's professionally made exhibits that came in beautiful cases, and our complimentary program, we thought about it. If people think about Wisconsin, when I say Wisconsin, what do you think about?
Cheese.
Exactly.
Cheese?
Right. Cheese, right? Cheese. How about maybe beer, maybe sausage, sauerkraut? All of those things are fermented, as is silage, as is coffee, as is chocolate, soy sauce. Okay. So our supporting programming was Fermentation Fest, a live culture convergence. I read about that.
Yep.
Yeah, and so for us, fermentation was not just the physical process, but the sort of metaphor of controlled rot in the right circumstances. Right, things rot and they turn to slop, but with the right starter culture and the right environment, they gives you extended shelf life, dense nutrients, strong flavors, and in some cases, altered states of consciousness. And we embraced all of those.
Did you and Donna both come up with that?
I think Donna might actually did that one, right? The fermentation.
What?
for strong flavors. That was Donna's. Yeah.
I'm impressed with that, Donna.
Yeah. So it was a potent metaphor for community transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, entropy is inevitable, but if you can turn that decay into in a starter culture, it doesn't take tractors. It takes a little bit of Kiefer Sutherland to turn that slop into something healthy and delicious. So.
Yep.
But also, it's also acquired taste too, right? Every culture has some fermented thing, and almost every other culture thinks it's disgusting until they taste it, right?
Yes.
That was a really big breakthrough for us because we had the total support of the Chamber of Commerce and the business community, folks who previously might have been hesitant to work with Wormfarm, the Wormfarm Institute, but now we had NEA, so they all, I mean, so they all got on board, but they joined us. And it was a great thing. It was 6 weeks long, and the storefront was a museum, and we engaged a broad swath of the fermentation community. The local farm ladies who've been making sauerkraut for generations, and also we got this guy Sandra Katz. You're familiar with him, the Art of Fermentation. Just before that book broke, he became a New York Times bestseller. We had signed him to come and do a thing like the week before. So we had like the local knowledge, and we had this international fermentation stars and everything in between. So that was really successful. But then it went away, right? After 6 weeks, Fermentation Fest and the key ingredients went away. So what are we going to do? Fermentation Fest might not be enough to keep everyone's attention. So this other idea of an art tour came up. And again, we live in this beautiful place with these beautiful back roads. And so we went out and we sort of scoped out a route, back roads that took us by, natural features or old barns and these things, and a 50-mile route. They went through 4 small communities. And then we identified some farmers, used our connections to help identify farmers who might let us install artwork in their fields. And we didn't really know what we were asking because we'd never done this before, and they didn't know what we were asking. And so there were a couple of folks we went to first. One was an early adopter, where he was like, hell yes, let's do this. And he just needed to be turned loose. And then the other one was the more the suspenders and belt kind of grumpier guy. And we spent a lot of time talking with him, and he misunderstood completely what we were asking, but agreed to do it anyway. And we didn't correct him. And then we made this thing happen. We just had like 8 or 9 people, like past resident artists. We're going to install stuff in fields here. And they did. We had no idea what happened. And 4,000 people came. And so that was part of it. So there are 2 parts. So the Fermentation Fest continued. And that was, now it's a 10-day thing, 2 weekends. And Fermentation Fest was mostly on those 2 weekends. And that was classes, workshops, dinners, tastings on all aspects of fermentation in and around storefronts in downtown Reedsburg. So the business community supported us that way. And then there was this drive that you took. And so there were 2 parts to it, and they worked sort of complementary. And 4,000 people, and I think, well, that was pretty good. We have to try that again. And so I think, and then the next year we did it, and 8,000 people came. And we're using car counters, and we had a formula. We were working with the Chamber of Commerce, which was like the headquarters. We would go and get your map and get your information, and then we had different surveys on the count. So we had a pretty good method for counting at the time. And 8,000 people came. As wow, this is great. And so it got a little bit bigger, and the artist selection process became a really important part of it. So in subsequent
that's what I was
years,
going to ask. The actual art that went on the farms.
Yeah.
What, like, was that like you selected artists to build something? Like, how did that work? Because those are structures.
Yes, right. Everything is temporary. No, everything is temporary. So the process now is and it was probably maybe by year 3, it had pretty much turned into something like this, where first we asked artists, we sent out a call for proposals, very, very sketchy proposals. It's kind of give us an idea of what you're thinking, show us what you've done in the past, and then we assemble a jury. Donna and I are always on it, but we are not, our voice is not definitive. We have lots of friends who've been disappointed, and it's like, well, it's a healthy thing when we don't get what we want necessarily. And so from the initial round of proposals, we select finalists. And those, now the way it works is those finalists come to Sauk County, they spend a weekend. Back before the pandemic, and when a lot of our work was centered in Reedsburg, we had homestays. So we'd match them with somebody, and we'd share meals and have potlucks, and they would talk about their work. And then we would take them for a drive on the route in a bus, rent a bus, and show them where work had gone before, and let them meet landowners and past artists. And then they have 1 month to go away and refine their proposals. There's usually like 15 to 18 finalists. They have a month to refine their proposals. They're paid for doing so. And
Okay.
and then the jury meets again and ranks them, and then we see how much money we have, how much money they ask for, and then we pick the artist that we can support. And then they get a lot of support. We match them with a site and a farmer, and sometimes the farmer wants to help. Sometimes they're just like, no, use the field. I'll just be over here.
Okay.
And
is every year a new theme, or is it a similar theme? How does that work?
No, it's just it's the land. It's all about the land and our interaction with the land, and I mean, you can tell when people have done their research on Wormfarm, because because of the fermentation thing and rot and then mushrooms and mycelium, and so you see all that stuff kind of showing up in there. It's like, oh, they're pushing our buttons there, and we're susceptible to that. We know we're being played, but that doesn't mean it's not a good thing. So those artists are, when they're selected, then usually they have like 2 weeks before the event to install, and we can get them, hopefully we can get them some help, some volunteer help or paid help or experienced help, and sometimes they just need hands. And then the thing runs for the 10 days, and then they have a week for it to go away. Now, what's been happening in the last few years is that the artists are working directly with the landowners and saying, hey, this is in a field that you're not really using. What if we just leave that there for a little while longer? And they're like, well, hell yeah, let's do that. And so we're seeing some of that now, or other farmers going, that thing that was in your field over there, would you mind if I had that? And so they work the artists and the landowners or farmers are working out their own side deals about where some of this stuff goes. There's been a couple of experiences. I mean, the most famous one that's probably in the literature there is the ruminant, the giant combine with stained glass windows. And that was one that was probably like 2013 or 14. The artist custom made all these stained glass windows to fit in and on a combine that we acquired. It was got it from the salvage yard. They were going to use it for the combine demo derby, a thing that happens at the county fairs out here, and they let us have it for like a month. And the artist made these beautiful stained glass windows, which were the value of which far exceeded what we were going to be able to commission him for. But at the end of the thing, he was going to be able to take these panels back and sell them because they were all beautiful and they had this wonderful theme. Well, it turned out that piece was very popular with the folks who lived on that stretch of road. They would go out there at night and have fires and drink beer. And then at the end of the event, they asked the artist what it would take for them to keep it. And he told them, and so they went and raised the money. He ended up getting the combine and the stained glass delivered to his farm or his place. He lived across this river in Minnesota. Kind of made all these things weatherproof, put some Lexan in front of them, and sent it back. And it's now the centerpiece of a new park in Reedsburg called Harvest Park. and a new nonprofit started to support this. And the guy who led the fundraising to make this happen was that cranky farmer, the suspenders and belt guy that, like, years earlier we had to convince. And now he became one of our biggest supporters. I mean, when we would go to the county board and ask for some support, or at least, get out of our way, and he would go, and he knew all these people because he had been there. You need to support this stuff. This is really important for our community. And so we did. So anyway,
Wow.
yeah.
That is impressive. I'm blown away, honestly. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. Our favorite thing about that is that it was somebody else who did it. It was like we they all handled that. We just sort of, we made the confluence of circumstances, the
Right.
format for phenomena to occur, and yeah.
Absolutely. But
yeah,
but someone has to do that piece, and
right.
then look at what came out of that. Wow. I'm so impressed. Besides the stained glass one, like, I'm not trying to make you choose, but is there any other pieces that stood out for you for some particular reason over the years? How many years have you been doing this now? The tour.
The first Detour was 2011, and it was an annual until 2016, when it was just it's a huge it is a huge undertaking. We're a tiny staff. We burnt people out, and we made them mad at us, and some folks who helped us never want to talk to us again. Okay, maybe not quite like that, but I mean, it was and so then we made it a biennial from 2016 to 2018. So now it runs even years, which always now.
And does the Fermentation Fest also run with it biannually? Because I saw 2023.
It sort of filled in the off year, so we kind of started doing them alternate, and then the pandemic kind of killed the classes part. Plus, so the Detour route changes. So the promise we make to the host, we pick a route, we alert everybody, work with the county, get the addresses for all the landowners along this route, and let them know what's going to happen. But it's for 3 years. So we're, for 10 days in early October, your roads are going to be clogged with Priuses and Subarus driving 4 miles an hour, stopping in the middle of the road to look at something, and then maybe pulling partway off and the doors fly open. And, people, we hear about it, but they also, they see the benefit of hosting city people. And that's really one of my proudest things. Okay, here we go. I have lots of pieces that I like for different reasons, but here's one that I really like. An artist who worked for several years now, Tori Tepp, created a piece called the Sauk County Arc. And it was land art, land earthwork, soil. So this was something that was never going to last only 2 weeks. This is something that required him to be on site for months beforehand, finding topsoil, finding all these different parts, but also doing it in a farmer's field. So a big part of it, in addition to the land art, was the planting of a type of grain called kernza, which is a newly developed grain by the Land Institute in Salinas, Kansas. It's a perennial grain. So you plant it once and you're able to harvest it. You don't need to plow and plant every year. You can use it for grain. You can bale it, or you can actually graze it. You can put cows on it. And still being researched, new strains being released all the time. Trying to figure out how it works into the regular food system. But he found an ideal field, and the farm was owned, got the exact right people. There's a family, I think they're might be Mennonite or something. They're sort of plain people, but they also have an on-farm bakery. They grow a lot of their own grains for that. They grow their wheat for that, and I don't know how, somehow they were convinced to take a 4-acre field and plant it to kernza. which they have hundreds, maybe even 1,000 acres. So it's not a huge deal, but but all the machinery and everything was different. So they committed this field to be in Kearns for 4 years. And Tori created this thing. And because he was there so long, he's not quite part of the family, but they really know him. And now, I mean, so this was in 2020. This happened. This piece is still out there right now, and he comes back and there's like additional programming. He's working with a local school to come out and do some stuff. He's been enhancing this thing. He made an earthen oven, so when they harvest the grain, they're turning it into breads and crackers. He's shared some of the grain with a local brewery, who's turned it into a beer, and now the son, the eldest son of the family, he and Tori are collaborating. They've built a foundry on the farm. Dean, the son, is a tinkerer, and he started a welding. When he worked with, it was Dean, the father, William, and Dean, the son, who are mostly running the farm. After working with Tori for 1 year, Dean took a year off from farming, bought a bus, and took his family on a round the country road trip. And another son had to come back and take over the farm. And then he started a welding business. He's a fabricator, and now they built a foundry, and they cast aluminum together. And so there's this and the relationship with William, the father. And because this is still an experimental grain, there's university people involved. And so there's these really wonderful interactions that are way, way beyond anything we ever anticipated when we introduced Tori to William. And like you said, this is years now. And so Tori now has made friends with other folks in the communities. There's a whole chapter about that in there.
Yeah,
So that
power of connection.
Yeah.
You have allowed for these connections to happen.
Facilitated, made the introductions. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
So
pretty amazing.
Yeah, very excited about those things.
So I don't know what the off year is. So do you have a new tour coming? Like, what year is the next new
2024
tour?
was the last year on that particular route. And after everything is cleaned up and put away, we have like a dinner where we invite all the landowners who can to come and give our appreciation and ask for their anecdotes. And it was you're going to do this. It's going to happen again, right? Well, 3 years is all we told you it's going to be 3. Oh, but you still going to do something. And I don't know. We'll have to see. So, there are currently. We don't have a new plan for 26 just yet. There are lots of other things we're figuring out internally. Wormfarm is going through some transitions internally. Donna's been the executive director since our founding 25 years ago. And so she's going to step down, not retire, but to step down. And so we're implementing a new leadership team. I might get to step up for a chance. And this fellow, Philip, this former resident, he and I are going to be part of a leadership team, and we'll see what the new version of Wormfarm looks like. But there's a lot of work. Even while we're here, we just had a big board meeting last night. When we get back, we're going to have a day-long meeting where we determine what the future of Wormfarm, what we think the future of Wormfarm Institute should look like, and then we'll see what the world thinks about it. So,
excellent. Yeah. Well, it's exciting though. On your website, you also you have the tour, you have the residency program, you have the Fermentation Fest. I saw some things about test plots and rural urban flow.
Yeah.
So I need to know about that.
well, test plots are the kind of what we do in the off season from the Detour now. So the Detour is like a year and a half of planning and implementation. Completely absorbing. So a test plot is an opportunity to step back and do something a little bit less ambitious, but more experimental, trialing new collaborations, bringing other people in and trying, new projects. And then maybe those are things that we develop in the following year in a detour. So we've called it, we've used the term growing season in the past for those types of things. Our work is very, very seasonal. I mean, that's why we're able to be here now. we are because of the residency, all of our work is sort of tied to, the ebb and flow of a growing season. So, for the last, 15 or 20 years, we've had like a season ending blowout, and then we don't go into hibernation, but we withdraw, and we like to use we like our nature metaphor. So like the roots are getting ready to throw out the shoots for the coming season, hence the pet spots term. Rural Urban Flow is a project initiative that we sort of embody in one way, because we're from urban area and we moved to rural area, and we understood because of that CSA thing how important those connections can be, but they're not really there. Wisconsin is, well, maybe not unique, but we had a thing happen where the culture of resentment was cultivated between rural and urban peoples in order to secure political power. That was right about the time the Detour started, that this stuff was happening in earnest. And so this is our attempt to call attention to these connections that already exist and are absolutely vital. So we can't, maybe there are some things that divide us, but there are many more things that link us, and art and culture and food are those primary things. So, I can't even tell you. So for a few years, I worked for an organization in Milwaukee called Growing Power, which was an urban agriculture organization. They were, the founder, Will Allen, is a MacArthur gene. He's still alive. And so we made a lot of really good connections in Milwaukee. And so as our work evolved, we started developing these connections with folks and being in each other's spaces. That's a big part of it. I think it might have been like after the 2016 election when we really started seeing those maps with the blue islands and the seas of red representing that divide. And my thought was like, no matter what you thought of the outcome of the election, that's not a healthy politic. So we began with greater urgency and deliberation, facilitating exchanges between rural and urban places. So, our collaborators in Milwaukee, before even that, they would send bus loads of artists and farmers to do the Detour. And they would, a lot of them would be the first time in rural Wisconsin. A lot of folks have expressed that they'd never felt it was a place where they could go or they would be accepted. But in a bus, it was fine. And then they'd get out and they'd talk to the locals and they thought, oh, it's okay. And then they also did this really beautiful thing where there was one of the folks on the bus, James Finlayson, who's a percussionist, brought like 50 different percussion instruments, some that he made and some were standard stuff. And we stopped at one site we call a food chain, where there's the food carts and it's a fire and people are gathered, and he passed out the things, and like within 10 minutes we're doing polyrhythms. And then another guy is doing Yoruba chants and people are thrashing and dancing around, and it was like, this is so beautiful. This was completely spontaneous, and we're all making music together. So we decided we need to send a busload of farmers and artists from Sauk County to Milwaukee. And when we go to Milwaukee, we don't want to see the Miller Park or the art museum. We want to go to places where people and culture from where it emanates. And so there's places that I know, but we had a really local historian. Actually, he calls himself a historian, doesn't like the history, just telling stories about the communities, and led this tour, and it was a beautiful thing. So we're cultivate those relationships between urban and rural places, and so there's always on the Detour, there's always a flow piece. We always have some flow collaborators sharing some of the work, and then we always try to whatever we can do to get into the city and bring folks that way too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. You guys are busy.
That's why this time is so important. Although we're busy here too. Donna's tapping away over there. Our time here is sort of a step away and a reset, but it's not really vacation. We're working. I mean, even we're developing relationships here that will hopefully manifest in something down the road. Whether the bridge, whether we bring more artists down here or bring more Mexican.
Do you explore outside of Mexico City, or do you stay mostly in the city?
Yeah, we've been all over, but we seem to have gravitated here. I mean, we're going to go down to Puebla for a couple of days. The city we've been to many times, but we haven't been in years because this place, right out from the door here, just endlessly fascinating. And I mean, I don't know if you've been here, but
I've been to Mexico City. I've been to Puebla actually, and I've been to a few places. Oaxaca, I was in, so I've been to a few, less of the resorty areas.
We're not beach people at all. And
the beach is nice. I could sit there for a few minutes and take it in, but I like to explore and really be integrated more into the culture and agriculture, so I'm all about that. But this has been a pleasure. What you both are doing is just truly amazing. How you've just created, manifested in, these connections between people, using art and agriculture in such a unique way. I'm so impressed, and just
thanks.
Thank you for everything you've done. I just think you've inspired so many people. I hope you guys realize that.
We love the work that we're doing. I mean, it's hard, it's frustrating. Don and I, we're never not at work, right? And so that part of it can be challenging, but it brings us great joy and pleasure and a sense of accomplishment. And I can't imagine, how it could have turned out any better than it is now. Well, maybe, I don't know. But we've been working without a net all this time. We're employees of our own organization. We raise the money that we pay ourselves. We're job creators. We're paying people out there. Donna, neither one of us was an admin. We say we failed to, engage with a clipboard person, but Donna has over the years made herself a highly effective executive. And I mean, just this budget thing that we did yesterday is like I'm among the innumerate, and Donna used to be that, but she's talking about rollovers and carryovers, and it's just like, and I just have to vote yes because everyone else it's okay too. So but it's pretty impressive that I mean the work that she's done. Foundation funding now, NEA support comes fairly regular. It's been a really great ride. Thank you.
So looking forward to the next stage of your journey and how this, I'll definitely, you have a newsletter, right? I believe you have a newsletter, or do you, how do you get updates are you on social media a lot, or how do you keep people posted on what's going on with the evolution of this?
Yeah, we're about ready to hire a communications person. I mean, like during the season when things are happening, we have a pretty active social media thing going. This time of the year, I mean, we might send like a MailChimp once or twice a quarter or something like that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're learning is how important that media piece is. I mean, that's where the conversation takes place. All the fabulous work in the world that you do, if no one knows about it, right? So, and I think now it's even more important to be part of that conversation with these positive bridging activities. And so we just hope we can keep it going for a few more years.
You will. I'm sure you will. Well, I'm excited to see what happens. So thank you so much, and enjoy Mexico City because today it's probably like 10 degrees outside.
Yeah. We
Is
have
it a cold
farm
wave
sitters
over there?
Yeah, well, it was 43 degrees here this morning. I'm like, I'm gonna
I'll
put on
take
a long
43.
sleeve. Yeah, but we we have animals on the farm, so we can't just leave. So we always have to engage a series of farm sitters. The other thing the residency program has been good for, so people get like a little midwinter mini residency, and they actually look forward to the ordeal too, because they know if I can stick it out for a week, someone else will come and I get to go home. But in the meantime, they get to hang out with the dog and the cats and stuff like that.
Okay,
Get
that's
some
good.
fresh eggs, etc. So yeah. So,
Excellent. Works out well for the
yeah,
schedule. I will enjoy the rest of your time in Mexico
you'll do.
City. Donna, you too.
Thank you,
Amazing
Donna.
job. Been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
My
All right.
pleasure.
Take care,
Bye.
Jay. Enjoy.
I hope our AgriTours podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. So I was recently listening to one of the Grounded in Maine podcasts produced by Amy Fagan. The podcast is an open conversation about being mindful about how we show up in the world. It's focused on sustainability and how sustainability impacts every part of our life. What are some of the most important takeaways that people will get from your podcast?
One of the things that I hope that people will take away from the podcast is encouragement. Like, I want them to not feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to be part of the solution, because, there are a lot of sustainable, things that say sustainability or sustainable, like solar panels or organic cotton and stuff like that. Like, some things are just more expensive because they have that tagline, that phrase or whatever. But there are so many ways that you can be sustainable. You just have to be a little bit creative. And so I'm putting out all these ideas that what people are doing, just to put the thought out there that we can all be part of it without going broke.
So how can people find your podcast?
My podcast is wherever podcasts are found. It is just called Grounded in Maine. I also have my Instagram is where I am most active, and the Instagram handle is Grounded in Maine Podcasts.